So, Michael, you and I have the very hard act to follow, and double that with we're right before lunch. So we will do our best. But delighted to be here with you and address some of the key topics that are on the agenda. The title of the conference is Mastering the New Economy, and I would say that there's two things that are very, very important in terms of mastering that new economy that are embodied between our companies. Certainly when it comes to energy and water, my company very much is based on and is founded on the notion that how we manage energy and water will form the basis for society and for the planet for the next 100 years. And everyone recognizes that the power in what we do these days is embodied in data, and your data is only as secure as the basis that you use for it. So between cybersecurity and energy and water, I think we've got a lot of really, really interesting things to talk through today. So maybe it would be good to start with a quick overview of the companies. I'll let you go first and then toss it back.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. My name is Mike Ferris. I'm the CEO of Abacode. We are a global cybersecurity and compliance firm. We really feel we have a noble purpose. We feel if companies aren't doing things in a certain manner, right, they're at extreme risk. We deal in trust every day. Most of our clients are throughout the Americas and Europe. We have 2 security operations centers, one in Tampa, Florida, one in Las Vegas, and I'm very excited to be here.
Excellent. Excellent. So reflecting back, Itron, we are a Washington State-based corporation. So we supply technology and solutions to utilities and cities all around the globe. So about 8,000 different utilities somewhere on the planet in 110 different countries are working with our technology. That's the basis for what we do with global operations in most parts of the world. So maybe let's start with some discussion around cybersecurity when it comes to energy infrastructure. From my perspective, utilities in general were founded many decades ago. The technology that they're operating with is somewhat antiquated and probably not well aligned to the needs of a much more modern infrastructure. How could a company like Abacode help?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I heard on one of the other panels someone talk about operational technology, and that is what we call OT environments, and then there are IT environments. So many cases and many times inside organizations, these are really separated, right? They have different leadership in the organization. They don't communicate well. They're kind of bifurcated. So for us, it's really unifying these two components of the business, IT and OT. You can think of operational technology as anything in manufacturing, critical infrastructure, water systems, utilities, and most firms who have to deal with OT environments are really worried about safety. So there are sensors, there are pressure valves that now have sensors on them. So if a bad actor gets in one of these, pressure valves, they can cause a lot of harm. So we're always talking about a collective story, a programmatic approach, a holistic approach to cybersecurity. So we try to start from the top down in the organization to say, how can you give a win to your technical leadership? And how can you give a win to your non-technical leadership, right? So many times a CFO, a CEO, or a COO is not technical. So they really need to be brought into the conversation and both those parties brought together. And I think unifying that discussion from the top down, like the board, is very important.
Right. Agree completely with the notion of the new world makes companies and our collective customers think and operate very, very differently than they traditionally had. That same notion applies to the energy transition that we work with every day. That idea that you've got to think about it very, very differently. The world of a utility, maybe I'll take a step back and spend a moment there. The world for a utility is very, very different today than it was 20 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago. There's three main challenges that utilities are up against. The first one is infrastructure. Infrastructure is getting older. It's not designed for cybersecurity threats that we have today. It's certainly not designed to provide a more sustainable future. It is operating in a way that the losses are wildly unacceptable in any other industry. About 30% of all water that is treated and pumped is lost before it ever makes its way to a consumer. So there's no other industry that operates with the same level of losses. And that is because of those infrastructure challenges, as an example. The second has to do with environmental factors, climate disruption. There's more floods and fires and hurricanes and droughts. It doesn't matter where in the world you may be operating, you're up against a very different type of pressure than what you've ever seen before. And the third is changing consumer needs. Depending on where you are operating in the world today, consumers are much more used to a different service experience than how they have traditionally dealt with utilities. When you combine those factors, you've got to solve the problem in a very, very different way than what we've seen before. And putting better visibility out at the edge of the network, putting better sensors out into the field, those types of technological solutions are what enable utilities to deal with that. But all of those sensors, all of those IoT sensors are out in the wild and exposed to all of the cybersecurity and physical threats that we have. We put about 200 million IoT sensors out in the world. They're collecting data 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and need to continue to operate that way. That type of mindset is very, very different. And I know it applies from a cybersecurity perspective from your business point of view as well.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of organizations, or are there any countries around the world who are adopting IoT? I guess they're leaning in a little bit more than other countries. What would you say?
It varies widely around the globe. I think maybe a good example would be Australia. So in Western Australia, in the afternoon, perhaps 70%, 60%, something in that range of power that is used in that part of the country comes from rooftop solar, private rooftop solar, and that's terrific from a sustainability point of view. And that works well, except if the clouds come over one particular neighborhood and all those houses want to move back onto the grid. How do you plan for that as a utility? 1 second you don't need it, and the next second you do. Yeah. So you have to be able to have a much more fungible demand, a much more agile set of assets than traditional ways of thinking, which was a one-way push of capability. So that's a Western Australia example, but I could talk about Africa or the Middle East or U.S. or Latin America. There's different challenges that express themselves in different ways. I'll reflect the same question back to you from a cybersecurity standpoint. Are there particular industrial pockets or customers or regions of the world that are doing it better, different?
Yeah, we see a few. So we see developing countries. The Middle East is huge, right? New infrastructure, new technologies, digital transformation. So the Middle East is absolutely leaning in on IoT. Latin America, right? They're leapfrogging kind of, wired, utilities and going straight to, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, LoRaWAN, which is a technology that chirps data instead of streaming data. So those countries for sure are definitely leaning in, but they are having a conversation around the security of the Internet of Things and those devices. MedTech is really concerned about devices. There are heart valves, stents, all sorts of pacemakers, medical devices that now have sensors who communicate outward. So there are, bad things that can happen, right? If any communication device can port out, then someone can get in. So we see a lot in the MedTech community dealing with the Internet of Things and trying to adopt that methodology, really concerned around the security of those devices, and they're adopting compliance standards in the product development of these new devices as well. So we felt that was good. We do a lot in compliance standards all over the world as well, like ISO 27001, HIPAA, high trust, different types of standards. So to see the medical community lean in on making sure at the front end of the development of these devices that security is baked in and compliance is adhered to is a huge step forward.
Spend a moment and unpack the compliance standard portion for me, if you would. And the basis for my question, okay, I'm coming from a different part of the business world than are you. In the energy space, compliance standards and regulatory environment is very, very different in different parts of the globe, based on economics and based on geography and availability of various sources. So it is a very fragmented world for me from a compliance perspective. Do you have the same challenges, or is it starting to unify?
Yeah, we do. So there's a privacy standard in Europe called GDPR, and that's every company, any type of organization, any sector, revenue, small, medium, large, they have to adhere to a certain standard. And Europe adopted that because they wanted to be the most secure, location in the world. And two, there was a lot of IoT device, a lot of technology innovation happening. So they knew that compliance would be critical to that growth. In the US, we've had different compliance standards in different industries and sectors for a while, like HIPAA and high trust for healthcare. The Department of Defense has now stood up and said any government contractor who does business with the government must now meet a standard called CMMC, or you can no longer do business with the government. And third-party, vendors, it's a risk. So the government says, you just can't touch our networks, or you just can't do business with us anymore. And so we're seeing multiple standards hit every industry and sector. We feel a national standard will come into play. And the biggest reason is these IT leaders, or just the C-level suite, when they try to think about cybersecurity and be more mature, it's difficult for them to know where to start. So really what these compliance standards do is give you a framework of controls that you can map to that will map your journey to a more secure and compliant environment. So it gives you a framework of controls to adhere to, like a roadmap. And that's really what it does for most organizations, is give you that roadmap.
Right. Do you, and this is potentially an awkward question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you see the movement of nationalism and globalism that is clearly pulling back? Do you think that gets in the way of cybersecurity, where, hey, my data must be resident on this continent versus that? Those types of regulatory environments, does it get in the way of cybersecurity, or is it a help?
I think it forces a different question. So with the cloud, right? You say, Amazon, where's my data? Try to find it. Very difficult. It's all over the world. They mirror data, so your data is located in multiple countries and simultaneously. So I think for us, it's really that CUI, understanding where does your data reside. That's one of the first places we start. Whether you're on-prem, you're co-located at a data center, or you're fully in the cloud. A lot of people think, I'm in the cloud, I am safe. It's actually not the case. And so understanding where your data is and following big cloud companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, understanding what they're doing around data and storage is important as well.
Right. For our business, we do large-scale grid projects for countries all around the globe. And if you are thinking about doing a national grid project, or a grid project for an entire country, clearly there's a keen interest in making sure that is secure and you understand where your data is. So our solutions very much are operating in a on-prem sometimes cloud-based, oftentimes a hybrid kind of scenario. So it creates complexity in the implementation. There's reasons that complexity is there, sometimes based on cybersecurity, but oftentimes just based on resiliency and reliability. And in the energy space, resiliency and reliability is the absolute key. When you flip the switch, the lights have to come on.
Yeah. What does stability, like what's happening in Israel, do to your company? I'm sure you're in Israel and locations all over the world. How does that impact you?
In a lot of different ways. I think first and foremost, the supply chain perspective on the world is very different. If you would look back 20 years, supply chains were generally about the lowest cost, and you had thought processes like just in time, which was really about achieving the lowest cost, also from a working capital, but also from a landed cost perspective. The world today is far more volatile, whether it's regional conflicts or whether it is tariffs or other types of disputes that come and go. How do you provide resilient and reliable service when you do that? You've got to shorten supply chains a bit more, regionalize them quite often, ensure you've got redundancy in how you operate. That's point one. And the second one is an area that probably you are more the expert than I, is in the security of the data. That the value we can bring for our customers is help them use the information and the assets, the infrastructure that they put into the field far more efficiently and robustly. If bad actors were to do something mischievous with your data, you clearly lose that advantage. So security has to start at every layer in how you think about your design process from the top to the bottom, and including probably the weakest link in all organizations, which are the people. It only takes one person clicking on the wrong link to cause some trouble.
That's right. And on the supply chain, 60% of attacks come through the supply chain. So that's why we're seeing compliance standards accelerate. Is now companies are saying, not only do I need to be secure, but all my vendors and suppliers need to be secure. So we're hearing from financial sponsors. You have new cyber rules coming out from the SEC. You have the new cyber liability policy coming from insurance. So compliance is reigning from all different areas down to organizations, and one is hitting that supply chain. And companies are now just saying, either you attest to meeting a certain compliance standard and you can prove it, or we can't do business anymore. And where insurance is headed is really today what insurance does is it's point in time. You get a certification or you attest or something of that nature to a certain standard. It's almost like someone coming to you and saying, hey, is your house on fire? And you said, well, it wasn't 3 months ago when I did the audit. So where they're really going towards is real-time compliance. So insurance and regulators in the near future will ask companies in real time, are you secure and compliant? And can you prove it? So that's one thing that we are following, is that real-time continuous security and compliance. It's something that we help companies achieve because we feel, like I said, insurance is going there, regulatory bodies are going there, the SEC is going there. So in the near future, that will be the standard that needs to be met.
Very good. I know we're about to run out of time with the audience today. Maybe any final thoughts you'd like to leave with everyone listening?
Great audience. Every one of the speakers has been fantastic. To follow Emilio was special, so I'll take that with me.
Very good. The same. Thank you very much for spending the time. I really, really do appreciate it.
Same.